All right, how's everyone doing? Can you all hear me? So I got a new interface because we think that was the problem we were having with the mic. So just make sure you guys are all hearing me with the new interface. It says audio is coming through. Hope everyone's doing well. I've got a very important stream to do tonight because he's back, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys know history with this guy, I have had to interact with him in the past because he keeps lying about Christmas. And it is getting really, really annoying. I will be able to demonstrate at this point that Jim Staley is lying to you. How do I know? He has been corrected on these things before, not just by me, but by people who used to work for him, people like David Wilbur, who's here on YouTube. We're going to play one of his videos. Jim has been corrected on many of these issues, and he continues to lie because he wants to use fear and manipulation and false information into getting you to follow him as some sort of leader or guru or guide. It's getting rather annoying at this point, the amount of lies he has. So I'm flying solo tonight because I sort of put this together last minute. I had watched his video a little bit over the weekend and put together notes yesterday, and I was like, I don't have time to get anyone, and I've got a lot to go through anyway. So I'm just going to kind of go through his video and show you all of the issues. Real quick, I want to thank channel members. We got some new channel members. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, John Sausage. I don't think that's your real last name. And Raph Weathers. Appreciate the new channel members. So I will go through super chats later as they go in. But yeah, we're going to get into this video he's got here. Let me put this up. This is his newest video, Should Christians Celebrate Christmas? And he's going to try to show you that Christmas traditions are grounded in paganism. And how is he going to do that? By lying. Yes. At this point, he has no excuse. He has been corrected on many of these things before. And some of the things he will attribute to, for example, Bede, like St. Bede. St. Bede didn't say these things. He'll say things that Plutarch said, which Plutarch didn't say. He's just going to get all his facts wrong. So let's get into this right here. And I assure you, we will show once again that Christmas is not pagan as the sweaters we sell on the website show.
So the first item we're going to cover in our quest for the truth is, why do we celebrate the birthday of Christ on December 25th to begin with? Now, I cover this extensively in its own video called December 25th on Trial. I highly recommend it. It's a very detailed and academic documentary.
There is nothing academic about this. So for those who don't know, he originally published this, I think, in March 25th of 2023. And we did a stream, a friend of mine, we did a stream on it. Jim took it down a few days later because he made so many errors, really bad. He read from Plutarch's work, Isis and Osiris, and he read from section 65. But he said Plutarch was writing in 65 AD. So he had misunderstood that. He re-uploaded it trying to fix some minor issues a few months later. Still many of the major errors in it. There's nothing academic about this. For him to make this claim, it just shows you he doesn't understand how to do proper research
on that subject. In the meantime, let's just encapsulate it in just a few short slides. First and foremost, it's important for you to know that the winter solstice used to be on December 25th, all the way back in the time of Christ, the first.
So that is true. That is the date of the winter solstice on the Julian calendar.
Century and before. The winter solstice was incredibly important to the ancient cultures as it was the shortest day of the year. And after that day, the days began to get longer. So they considered that's the day when the sun was reborn. So it shouldn't.
Okay. Here is what he's not telling his audience. I'm going to put some slides up here. We have no evidence of any major holiday in the Roman Empire on December 25th prior to the rise of Constantine. Let's put up some slides here. So this is, again, I've quoted this guy so many times because he's an actual historian. Okay. Ronald Hutton says the official calendar of Julius Caesar marked them at the 25th. That's the solstice. The uncertainty was perfectly natural, for at midwinter and midsummer, the solar orb does not appear to rise and set in the same place for a few days. The very term solstice is taken from the Latin, the sun stands still. The traditional pagan Roman calendar had left this period as a quiet and mysterious one. and flanked it instead with a festival of preparation and one of completion. The former was the feast of Saturn, the Saturnalia, and the days after the 17th of December, and the latter was the New Year festival. So we don't have any evidence that the Romans actually celebrated on the winter solstice prior to Constantine. Okay? During the time of Constantine, part of the time he was co-rolling with someone named Licinius. There's an inscription that shows Licinius worshiped the sun on November 18th, not December 25th. The very first time anyone is celebrating on December 25th, a pagan holiday that is this. This is the calendar of Philocalus, and it dates to 354 AD, long after Constantine. Okay, and it says 30 games ordered for the birthday of the unconquered one, basically. Okay, here's the thing to keep in mind. We have plenty of references to pagan holidays on December 25th after Constantine, with the rise of Christianity under Constantine. If that's the case, it's far more likely, in my view, that the reason pagans started putting a holiday on that day was because Christians were using it, and there was a rise of Christians. Christians started gaining power under Constantine. They wanted to compete with that. So they started moving pagan holidays to that date. Okay, because again, we don't have any evidence of any holiday prior to that. If this was such a major holiday for them, why don't we see any references to major pagan festivals prior to this? Stephen Hyman says, in fact, there's no firm evidence that this Feast of Sol on December 25th antedates the Feast of Christmas at all. The traditional feast days of Sol, as recorded in the early fasti, were August 8th, August 9th, August 28th, and December 11th. Of these, only August 28th is still mentioned in the calendar of 354, along with October 19th and October 22nd. The latter being the most important, judging by the 36 chariot races with which it was celebrated. There is direct evidence that in AD 274, Aurelian instituted, basically, I forget how to say that, quadrennial agons in honor of Sol, which were held from October 19th to the 22nd and culminated in the unprecedented 36 chariot races recorded in the calendar of 354. Okay, so everyone was celebrating and worshiping the sun on different days. We have no evidence that they consider the winter solstice to be a major festival. Jim does not share that information he just assumes that it is. Okay, so Matt's in the chat. Matt does a lot of social media for me, and he's supposed to be on vacation right now. Matt, what is going on here? Oh. All right, let's continue on. By the way, if my mic mutes at all, please let me know, because of the last two live streams, it started to mute on its own, and I don't know why. So if it's mutes, just start, hooting and hollering in the live chat, and I will try to fix it. Again, we got a new interface here, so hopefully that fixes the issue. But it seems like it's working just fine now. So just keep that in mind. I don't want my my mic to go out or anything like that, because that would be annoying. So let's put this back up here, and let's keep playing this.
Surprise us that this is the day that the sun gods of Egypt and Rome were said to have been born. All throughout time, the winter solstice was a major focal point for many cultures, whether you're a king, a pharaoh, or a very influential person. Take a look, for example, in Newgrange Tomb in Ireland, hundreds of years old. Stonehenge in England, almost everyone is familiar with that cultic site. Gothic Circle in Germany, where they had the winter solstice show up on one side and the summer solstice on the other. And of course, the most famous, in my opinion, is the Temple of Amun-Ra in Egypt. It was a small opening that only on the winter solstice, the rays of the sun would shine onto the tomb of the sun god. And why is that? Because like I mentioned earlier, they believed that this was when Horus was born.
Okay, there are no sources which say Horus was born on the winter solstice. Okay, he was corrected on this in the past. Okay, he is once again giving you false information. Let's go back to some slides here. So let's start first with Stonehenge and the Celtic regions, the Germanic regions, Britannia, these kinds of things. Okay. Hutton says Stonehenge is, however, utterly unique in its structure. To sum up, it is clear that at particular times and places in British and Irish prehistory, the cardinal points of the sun, and particularly the winter solstice, had considerable ritual importance. Okay. But then he says this: Nonetheless, the vast majority of prehistoric monuments in these islands do not relate to any of them, so that no overall or enduring pattern of cult can be detected. Furthermore, a considerable gulf separates all these monuments from the pre-Roman British Iron Age. Not one of the temples which has yet been found to possess any significant solar alignment. So, very, very ancient times, they may have had some sort of ritual for the winter solstice, but we're talking like thousands of years before Christianity ever was on the scene, before Christians even touched the British Isles. And then there's this big gulf in between Stonehenge, like through the Iron Age, later periods. Then you get to the Roman period. No evidence of any solar worship happening on the winter solstice in that time, when it would have been, if in any way, influential to Christianity. So he's just doing this weird association fallacy thing where it's like, oh yeah, there was totally these winter solstice festivals going on at that point. Really, like thousands of years later, and then they stopped. No evidence this was happening in the Roman period. Now, his favorite one, he said in the video, was the temple in Egypt. He's like, this is a shoo-in one. Well, I actually asked an Egyptologist, David Falk, about this. He says the Egyptian calendar didn't stay static because they didn't use intercalculation. So the solstice, which is an observational event, gradually moved across the entire calendar. However, because of Egypt's relatively mild and moderate climate, they didn't place any particular significance upon the solstice. Seasons in Egypt were much more determined by the Nile flooding and the agricultural cycle. So no evidence of a solstice festival in Egypt either. They like to look at celestial events, sure, but that doesn't mean they had a holiday on them that Christians could have borrowed or adapted. This is absurd nonsense. If you want to see more from David Falk, you can check out his channel, Ancient Egypt in the Bible. So he's right on there. Real quick, Jim Staley, is he that Hebrew roots guy? Yes, he is one of those Torah observant guys. He was pushing it many years ago. He went to prison for a little while for unrelated things, and then he came back, and he's back again. And again, this is part of his gateway to that Torah observant stuff, where he's trying to like, hey, come do this because Christmas is pagan. He's using fear and lies to get people into his movement, which should say a lot about the kind of person he is and what he wants to do. But yeah, no evidence that any of that goes back to paganism. So he just makes these baseless claims, like that they were celebrating a solstice festival in Egypt or in the British Isles. We don't have any evidence of that. So yeah, let's continue on.
Matter of fact, just as evidence for this, we can go over to Plutarch, who is a historian that lived in the 1st century. He said this: for this reason, it is said that Isis, when she was aware of her being pregnant, put on a protective amulet on the 6th day of Phaeophi, and at the winter solstice gave birth to Hippocrates. Now, Hippocrates was simply the name of the child god Horus, who is the sun god of all of Egypt, and he was born on the winter solstice. But
okay, someone alert Dr. Falk that he just said Horus was a sun god. No, Horus was a sky deity. He was related to the sun because the sky contained the sun. But the sun god of Egypt was Ra. Everyone knows that. Like, this is just bad. And let's go back a little bit here. I just want to put this back up here. Notice what he says here. He says, Plutarch admits that Horus was born on the winter solstice. That's not what he says. Let me put this back up here for you. I will show you what Plutarch actually says in section 65 of Isis and Osiris. Okay, here's what Plutarch actually says. On the 6th day of the month of Phaeophi, not sure how to pronounce that, and about the time of the winter solstice. Oh, about the time. See how Jim changes it? She gave birth to Hippocrates, imperfect and premature, amid the early flowers and shoots. For this reason, they bring to him as an offering the first fruits of growing lentils. And the days of his birth, they celebrate after the spring equinox. Horus wasn't born on December 25th or the winter solstice. They didn't celebrate his birth during the winter solstice. They celebrated in the spring, and they're not sure of the exact date, according to Plutarch. Now, Plutarch has influence from Greek legends. his information on Egypt may not be entirely accurate. And like Trygve Manager has noted this in his book. So not the best source to go to, but even with that, it doesn't say what Jim is saying. And Jim has been corrected on this. So you may not know this, but when Jim first uploaded his December 25th on trial, someone who used to work for him, as I mentioned, David Wilbur, did a short little response. Jim and him talked on the phone, and David said he would take down the video because Jim was going to correct himself. So David did. Well, Jim has not corrected himself. So I told David he should re-upload the video. But David gave me a link. I can play you that video right now. So you can see Jim was corrected on it. David here on the screen had a phone call with Jim about this issue. David agreed to take down this video because Jim said he would correct himself. Jim has not. I'm going to play a little bit of this. You can see Jim was corrected on this, and he talked to David. Jim doesn't care. He's just pushing misinformation and lies.
So the other day, Jim Staley released his new documentary, December 25th on Trial. He tries to make the case that the Catholic Church adopted December 25th as the date of the Messiah's birth in their effort to take over an existing pagan holiday.
Also, notice the date. Okay, this was March 28th, 2023. That was a few days after Jim uploaded his first edition of December 25th on Trial.
The documentary is full of factual errors and misrepresentations. However, I want to focus on just one segment from the video because I think it demonstrates an important lesson for us. Before we proceed, just a quick disclaimer, my family does not celebrate Christmas. We have personally found the biblical holidays to be much more meaningful and, well, biblical. I am not saying that anyone should or should not celebrate Christmas, and I'm not even saying that there is no evidence that some Christmas customs may have come from paganism. My only objection is to the misrepresentation of sources, which is a huge problem if we claim to have a passion for truth and if we have positioned ourselves as teachers within the body of Messiah. So with that said, let's get started.
Now let's go over to a Greek philosopher, Plutarch, in 65 AD.
So the first problem here is that Plutarch was not writing in 65 AD.
See, that was one of the things Jim corrected for the second edition of this because he knows he made a huge error there. But he didn't want to correct all the information. The information that was useful to him, he just kept, even though it was just wrong.
And in fact, Jim is going to quote from Plutarch's essay on Isis and Osiris, which was written very late in Plutarch's life. Scholars have dated it to the early 2nd century based on the fact that the work was dedicated to a woman who was the granddaughter of one of Plutarch's contemporaries. So where on earth is Jim getting this date of 65 AD? Well, I can't read Jim's mind, but 65 is the section number of the passage from Plutarch's essay. Presumably, Jim saw the number 65 next to the passage he is about to quote and seems to have just assumed it was the date of this text. Perhaps there is a different explanation. I would certainly love to know how he came up with this date, but that's not the only problem. Let's continue.
He details for us that the ancient stories and all the legends of the Greek gods and the goddesses of that time have to do with the winter solstice. He says, quote, "For this reason, it is said that the goddess Isis, when she was aware of her being pregnant, put on a protective amulet on the 6th day of Phaeophi, and on the winter solstice, she gave birth to Hippocrates."
So you saw that. It's the same quote. Same quote from last time. Okay? The only thing he changed was he admitted it wasn't from 65 AD.
Now, Hippocrates was the child. It literally means the child Horus. Horus was the sun god of Egypt, and they're saying that she bore him on the winter solstice.
So
Horus is not the sun god of Egypt. That is going to get so annoying.
this translation is not entirely accurate. Every translation of this passage that I've been able to find says that Hippocrates was born about or around the time of the winter solstice, not precisely at or on the winter solstice. Here's the relevant passage in Greek. When peri is paired with an accusative in reference to time, it means about or near. So the passage is literally saying that Isis gave birth to Hippocrates around the time of the turn of winter. So contrary to Jim's claim, Hippocrates was not born on the winter solstice. That's a misrepresentation of what the passage is saying. Let's keep going.
So not only does Plutarch tell us that the sun god of Egypt was celebrated on the winter solstice.
Okay, so I'm going to play this again to make sure that everyone catches what he says here.
So not only does Plutarch tell us that the sun god of Egypt was celebrated on the winter solstice, but he does so only halfway through the 1st century, long before a single Catholic writer ever decided to try to figure out the date of the birth of Christ.
So, Jim says that Plutarch, quote, tells us that the sun god of Egypt was celebrated on the winter solstice, end quote. He cites a passage about the birth of Harpocrates around the time of the winter solstice, and then leaps to the conclusion that he was celebrated at this time. Again, this is a complete misrepresentation of the source. Even if we accept the translation that Jim used, Plutarch says nothing about the sun god being celebrated on the winter solstice. All it says is that he was born at the winter solstice. But it gets worse. The very next sentence in this same passage from Plutarch, which Jim did not quote, says that the days of his birth were celebrated after the spring equinox. So, in this one example, we have 3 misrepresentations. Plutarch's essay was not written in 65 AD. According to the Greek, Plutarch does not say that Harpocrates was born on the winter solstice, and Plutarch says nothing about a celebration on the winter solstice. In fact, he goes on to say that the celebration occurred after the spring equinox. Now, when I brought this information to Jim, he dismissed it as a minor error and accused me of being nitpicky. I will let you guys decide whether or not this is a minor error and if I am indeed being nitpicky. But in my opinion, this is an issue worth addressing. We cannot be misrepresenting our sources. And if someone cannot be trusted to get the small things right, how can we trust them to be right about other things?
Well, not only that, Jim was corrected on this over a year ago. If he's going to keep spreading lies about what something simple like what Plutarch said, how can we trust him on other things as well? That should raise a lot of red flags. Here he is spreading this misinformation and lies again. So again, Jim just can't claim, oh, I made a mistake at this point. Okay, he has been corrected on this. He is continuing to lie because he wants to find as much pieces he can use, lies, whatever you want to call it, to just scare people about the dangers of Christmas so that they'll maybe join his movement and start worshiping with him at his church or following him, this kind of stuff. It's really unfortunate. But at this point, he is lying. In this very video, he is just spreading this misinformation about what Plutarch said again. And again, he's also getting other things wrong. Horus is not the sun god. Horus is a sky god.
On the winter solstice. But that's not the only god that was born on the winter solstice, December 25th. We can go over to Rome and find the exact same thing. This comes out of the Catholic Encyclopedia where it says this, and I quote, Helios Mithras is one god. Sunday was kept holy in honor of Mithra. The 25th of December was observed as his birthday, the Natalis Invicti, the rebirth of the winter sun, unconquered by the rigors of the season.
All right, I'm going to put that back up so we can just take a look at that. Okay. He's also claiming Mithras was born on December 25th. We have corrected him on this before as well. There is no evidence of any documents stating Mithra's birth date. There aren't. Where this comes from is people read the calendar of Philocalis, and it says that this was Sol Invictus, the birthday of the sun god Sol. People assumed, oh, well, it must also be the birthday of Mithras, who was also a sun deity, but that doesn't follow. And scholars like Stephen Hymans have pointed this out. But Roger Beck, I'll put up this quote here. Roger Beck also points out this. He says, in truth, the only evidence for its celebration, is the celebration of the birthday of Invictus. That is on the date of the calendar of Philocalis. Invictus is, of course, Sol Invictus, Aurelian's sun god. It does not follow that a different, earlier, and unofficial sun god, Sol Invictus Mithras, was necessarily or even probably born on that day too. So, again, Jim is just getting his facts wrong here. We have no evidence that Mithras was ever said to be born on December 25th. But again, he just keeps spreading this misinformation that he has been corrected on for years. Oh, real quick, I'll get to some super chats here. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well. Staley reminds me of the old Elvis Costello song. I used to be distinguished. I used to be disgusted, but now I try to be amused. Yeah. It's sad, really. The guy is delusional. It's really, dude, like, it's really hard to take him seriously when he is just blatantly lying. Like, again, he got everything wrong about Plutarch. We corrected him here. He had a phone call with David Wilbur. David agreed to take down the video because Jim would correct himself. He's still pushing this nonsense. It's obvious he's not interested in facts. He wants to find whatever he can to push his agenda that you should not celebrate Christmas. And he'll use lies and manipulation to do that. It's really sad. Do not trust him. Do not listen to him. If he can't get this stuff right and he's clearly lying to you, what else is he lying to you about? That's what I would be thinking.
Of the season. And not only that, we can just go right over to the calendar of 354, right in the middle of Rome. And on December 25th, what do we see? An inscription that literally says, birthday of the unconquered, games ordered, 30 races.
Yeah, of course. And that dates to 354 AD. And we actually had to point this out in the original video link below, that he actually, in the original documentary, looked at the wrong place on this. He actually went to like the 30th or something and pointed to it. And so that's another reason he like quickly took it down and re-uploaded it a few months later, because he had made that error.
Not only is the birthday of Christ put on December 25th, but it comes from right here on the Roman calendar. They were celebrating the birthday of the sun god, and the emperor is ordering 30 races in his honor. So why did they move the birthday of Christ to December 25th to begin with? We have to go to Syriac Bishop, talk about it.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. So the reason why they moved it, the main reason is just Christians were doing calculations. This is what scholars like Thomas Staley, Thomas Schmidt have noted. Basically, Christians believed that a prophet would die on the same day he was born. But in the Gospels, of course, the important thing is Jesus' conception. So they believed Jesus would die on the same day he was conceived. They'd calculated this, like you read Hippolytus of Rome, they'd calculated Jesus' death to March 25th. That means he was conceived on that day in their minds. Count forward 9 months, you get December 25th. That's the reason. It has nothing to do with paganism.
Move the birthday of Christ to December 25th to begin with. We have to go to Syriac Bishop Jacob Barsalaby in the 1100s to find the answer. And I quote, now the reason why the fathers of the church moved the January 6th celebration to December 25th was this, they say. It was the custom of the heathen to celebrate on this same December 25th, the birthday of the sun, and they lit lights then to exalt the day. Even Christians were participant in these rites and ceremonies. When therefore the teachers of the church saw that the Christians inclined to this custom, they established a plan. The true natal feast would be celebrated on this day, and Epiphany on January 6th.
Okay, so Jacob Barsalaby didn't say that, but we'll get to that in a minute.
And so we see right there inside of the Roman Catholic Church, their own bishops admit they changed the day and put it on what used to be a previous pagan sun god birthday.
Okay, this is what I mean about just being sloppy. Like Jim is just being sloppy. Salaby wasn't a Catholic bishop. He was an Orthodox bishop. I'm seriously concerned that Jim might not even know the difference there. Okay, this guy's writing in Syria. He's part of the Eastern Church. This is after the split. He's not Catholic. Okay, Andrew McGowan wrote a blog post on this called the Cirrus Code. And he's talking about this passage. He says the passage quoted above is actually a note written by an otherwise unknown 12th century scribe in the margins of the manuscript of the slightly earlier author, Dionysius Barsalaby, 12th century bishop of Amida. Okay? The text written in Syriac was first published in the 18th century in a remarkable collection of Eastern Christian manuscript material from the medieval period. Okay? Doesn't come from him. Guy's not Catholic. Jim just doesn't get little things right or the big things right. Okay. And again, this guy is writing, whoever this unknown author is who wrote in the margins, this guy's writing centuries after Constantine. He's not a go-to source on the origins of Christmas. I don't know of any scholar who's written on Christmas that would consider this as like a good source. Ronald Hutton included this, but Ronald Hutton later admitted he was wrong about this in his book, The Stations of the Sun. And he even goes on in Stations of the Sun to sort of like challenge that quote and say, well, it may not be the actual thing. But yeah, this is just sloppy. This is really bad. That's not what it actually says here. So let's get back to the video and hear more about what Jim has to say, because it's going to get worse.
Now, even some scholars today say that, oh, it was the Christians that had December 25th first and the pagans borrowed from it. But right here, it's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, it's a dead giveaway because some guy in the 12th century said so. This is Jim's horrible reasoning capabilities. Okay. We can't look at the actual evidence from the 3rd and 4th century. We got to go on what some unknown author wrote in the margins of a manuscript said. That somehow is a dead giveaway in his mind. It shows you how desperate he is to make Christmas pagan.
Not only do we have evidence from Egypt, hundreds of years before Christ ever showed up, that the birthday of the sun god was on the winter solstice.
No, we don't.
But we have the Catholic Church's own bishops admitting that they made the change because there was an already existing pagan sun worshiping day on the winter solstice, and they wanted to take it over. Case closed.
Case closed, ladies and gentlemen. Some guy in the 12th century makes up something. It's therefore true.
That's just the facts of history. As a matter of fact, we can go to the 500s and see that this was a big problem with Christians celebrating these sun god worship days during the Feast of Saturnalia in Rome and the worship of...
Why does he keep doing that? He's done this in so many past videos. It's not Saturnalia, like Saturnalia or something. He adds like an extra syllable in there. It's Saturnalia. Listen, I am no one to be like complaining about mispronunciation. I do that all the time. I was saying Stephen Hidgmans for years, even though it's Stephen Hymans apparently. But when I was corrected, I fixed that. Like we have pointed out to Jim, and he like many times, it's Saturnalia, not Saturnalia or Saturnalia. I don't even know what he's saying.
Sun gods, mixing that with the Son of God, the true Son of God, in this particular quote from Bishop Martin of Braga in 575 AD says this: "You shall not perform the wicked celebrations of the Calends and observe the holiday of the Gentiles, nor shall you decorate your houses with laurel and green branches." Sound familiar? This whole celebration is pagan. Now, I don't know about you, my friends, but all the way back in the 500s, a Catholic bishop is telling us that this entire holiday is pagan. And what are we doing? We're decorating our homes with green laurel and green branches and bringing trees into our home. And we're literally doing the same things that the pagans did thousands of years ago. We're going to get into all of it.
Okay, so he claims this bishop is now notice Jim said this is about Christmas. Okay. It's not. I went and found with his source. So he's citing this book called like Pagan Europe, but Pagan Europe is citing an earlier book here. So let me get that up here for you. Because the actual source, and again, we did this all in this. If you want to see how I showed like his Jim's source is like the book called Pagan Europe. Pagan Europe is actually citing a different book, which is this book here by Alexander Tilley. Now, the page number, I believe, is 103. So I'm going to go down to page 103 here. Show you in real time. Because I have it highlighted here. Okay. What does the bishop say here? Let me make that a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. Okay. Okay, so this is what Tilley says. This is going through Jim's own sources. Jim cites a book called Pagan Europe. Pagan Europe cites this as the source. What does it say? It says, when the chapters of Bishop Martin of Braga, AD 575, forbade the faithful to observe dangerous Calades custom. Oh, it's not December 25th customs. It's the new year. To keep the heathen times of leisure and to adorn their houses round about with laurel and green trees, he rendered a very great service indeed to folklore, for this seems to be the only prohibition of that custom which has come down to us. And it is not until the 800s later that we can show houses to have been adorned with green and trees at New Year and Christmas. Okay. He's talking about the New Year festival that Jim is citing. He doesn't want to tell his audience that. He wants to pretend it's about Christmas. Notice the sleight of hand, the shifting. Okay. It's not about Christmas, but Jim just says, oh, look, decorating greenery is bad. And first of all, the bishop is just simply wrong. There's nothing sinful about decorating with greenery. The guy was obviously just paranoid. But this is the level of Jim's reasoning. If a bishop in the 500s said decorating with greenery is sinful, then Jim's going to agree with him because that fits his agenda. Is he also going to agree with that bishop about Catholic traditions and customs, early church traditions and customs? No. The guy very much pushes Torah observing, keeping the Sabbath, keeping the feast, keeping the kosher laws, which the bishop from the 500s would vehemently disagree with. But Jim is just being selective with that because he's looking for things to fit his agenda. So there we have him yet again, getting his information wrong.
Right now. If you'd like more information on December 25th on trial, I really encourage you to watch that teaching when you're finished with this one. It will absolutely enlighten you at the depth of academic material that will be presented to give a more in-depth look at that particular.
Yeah, he doesn't cite a lot of academic material. He cites outdated sources from like 100 years ago, like encyclopedias, and he just takes primary sources, like, as you've seen, he takes them out of context. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Topic. In the meantime, let's continue. Have you ever heard the Christmas song that goes like this? Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a fire, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. I'm sure you have. It's an easy to sing song. You hear it in almost every department store this time of year. But do we think about the lyrics? What is Yuletide? That's what we're going to discover. Where it comes from the word Yule, which, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, Yule is one of the oldest winter solstice festivals with origins among the ancient Norse thousands of years ago. Some
I like the shift in music, all happy, but it's actually evil.
Historians think that sacrifices were an important part of the observance, either to the gods and other supernatural beings such as elves, or to the dead, or both. Among Odin's many names was Yulner, and among his many duties was acting as a god of the dead. Yule became a name for Christmas only until about the 9th century, and in many languages, Yule and its cognates are still used to describe that holiday. So let's dive a little deeper in this, because we discover that Yule is actually the name of a pagan holiday that goes all the way back to the Viking god Odin, and it's still celebrated by pagans today. You can look it up anywhere. Practicing pagans celebrate Yule. They don't celebrate Christmas, they celebrate Yule, and even they know that we stole it from them. According to Encyclopedia Britannica,
no, modern pagans claim we stole it from them because they want to feel special. There's no evidence of it, though. They just make things up.
This merge happened in the 10th century with Hakon the Good of Norway. He says the Norse rule celebration and the Christian Christmas celebration were merged. Hakon became Christian after a visit to England, and after his return to Norway, he put into law that Yule should be celebrated at the same time as Christmas. From this point, Christmas continued to overtake Yule, although some vestiges of the original celebration remain, and one of these is the Yule Law.
This is why I hate Encyclopedia Britannica. I keep finding errors in it, and I'm just so annoyed with them. Now, this might be like some older edition. Given Jim, I wouldn't be surprised. But like, I didn't even bother to look up because we'll just go to the primary sources on this. So Encyclopedia Britannica is correct on one thing, that Yule was moved to December 25th. Snorri Sturluson says in the Heimskringla, King Haakon was confirmed as a Christian. He arrived at Norway. And then it says he established the laws that the celebration, that is of Yule, would take place at the same time as the custom of the Christians. Before that, Yule was celebrated on midwinter night and for the duration of 3 nights. So so when people tell you Yule used to be on December 25th and then Christians took that, remember this quote from Icelandic chronicler, I believe he's writing in the 13th century, says, no, Yule was placed on that date to coincide with Christmas. This is once again another example of pagans moving holidays to that date to compete with the rise and spread of Christianity. Now, also the thing about Yule is the word Yule in various spellings means loosely defined a midwinter period, not a single day, in the early languages of most Germanic and Scandinavian countries. Yule used to mean a specific holiday, but when the word moved into English, when words move across languages, they tend to change meaning. When it moves into English, it just means a midwinter period. It does not keep referring to the ancient holiday. Jim doesn't want to tell you that fact because it doesn't fit his agenda. Okay. And again, in the past, I would have said maybe he's just confused. Maybe he just did bad research. He doesn't get that pass now because, again, we have demonstrated he's been corrected on these things and he's continuing to lie. So let's play a little bit more before we get to Yule logs, because again, Yule logs do not come from Yule. We have no evidence of what we know about Yule that they had any sort of special log or anything like that. But this is what Jim is about to tell us.
The Yule log is one of the most ancient parts of Christmas that comes right out of pagan worship. Most scholars believe that it started out bringing an entire tree into the house. They would carve the trunk of the tree with pictures of Odin and Thor and different gods and deities. And then they would place the large end of the tree into the fire first, and they would burn it for guess how many days? 12. That's right. And that 12 comes right from the Yule celebration all the way back to Odin himself. And not only did they carve the names and the pictures of their gods on the Yule log tree, but according to worldhistory.com, they say this, quote, Vikings and Scandinavians in general decorated evergreen trees with carvings of the gods, runes, clothing, and food. I find it very interesting that although modern scholarship says that the Christmas tree most likely originated from England,
modern scholarship does not say the Christmas tree originated in England. Ken, he has not read any of the modern scholarship. It originated in Alsace, France, which was a Germanic region. The earliest references are like in the 1400s. Okay, it didn't move to England until like Queen Victoria. How much of this has he actually researched?
If you go all the way back to the time of the gods of Odin and Thor and so on, we find patterns and elements that are eerily familiar to what we do today. And I think the icing on the cake is that many of our traditions are coming right out of the Vikings and how they worship their gods, specifically with.
Okay, so there is no evidence Yule logs go back to Yule. I know people, like, I used to think that when I was researching this stuff, one of the things I said is like, Christmas isn't pagan, but maybe incorporated pagan traditions like Yule logs or mistletoe. Then I was like, well, let me actually look these up. Stop assuming. They don't. The earliest reference to Yule, to any sort of special log burned at Christmas, this comes from 1648. Robert Herrick, and he calls it a Christmas log. It's not even called a Yule log until like 40 years later when John Aubrey called it a Yule log. That's the very first reference to a Yule log, ladies and gentlemen. It does not go back to paganism. Like, wow. So yeah, again, it just means a midwinter period. This is absurd. He has not done his research. He just hears the word Yule log. Oh, it must go back to Yule. Guys, history is more complicated than that. It's not always that simple. And people want to make these association fallacies, parallelomania. You know, we see this all the time with like, oh, Easter sounds like Ishtar, therefore that's where Easter comes from. Jim has said that stuff in the past too. Hopefully he doesn't still believe that. But yeah, it's the same nonsense. Let's play a little bit more here.
With Odin. So we've talked about the Yule log and Christmas trees. What about the mistletoe? Well, the origin of the mistletoe being associated with kissing and love can be traced all the way back to ancient Rome and Greece. And the tradition of decorating with mistletoe began during the Roman winter solstice called Saturnalia.
Why does he add an extra syllable every time? But okay, he's even wrong. Let me back this up just a little bit here.
With kissing and love can be traced all the way back to ancient Rome and Greece. And the tradition of decorating with mistletoe began during the Roman winter solstice called Saturnalia, a week-long festival that was filled with debauchery.
So again, it's not a sun festival. Saturnalia was celebrating the god Saturn. It was an agricultural festival. It was not a sun festival. And I can't find any reference that say they specifically... Yeah, that sounds like what he's saying. Saturnalia. Like, that's not at all what he's saying. It's something. Yeah. Maybe there's a lost holiday called Saturnalia that Jim has found that took place right after Saturnalia. Who knows? Okay, but I can't find any early references that say they specifically decorated with mistletoe. Maybe they did. I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, the earliest references to decorating with mistletoe, much later. Let me play a little bit more here.
Drunkenness and orgies. The Greeks considered mistletoe a symbol of male fertility and called its white berries oak sperm.
Notice he's not citing any sources here. He's just making claims. And what does Matt Dillahunty say? Claims are not evidence. Okay, now I obviously don't agree with that. But he needs to cite some sources for this, and he doesn't cite any of those.
Druids considered mistletoe a sacred plant with medicinal and mythical powers. They would cut mistletoe from oak trees with a golden sickle on the 6th night of the moon. And if we go back to our famous Norse mythology with Odin, the god Baldur was killed by an arrow made of mistletoe. His parents, Odin and Frigga, restored his life and gave mistletoe to the goddess of love. So as you can see, the mistletoe was always looked at as a spiritual, mystical plant that had some sort of fertility rights
Was it now?
and mystical powers. And that's why we kiss under the mistletoe today.
No, that is not why we kiss under the mistletoe today. Jim has just committed an association fallacy from lies. Even if he was right, that would not mean that's the origin of kissing under the mistletoe, because it would be an association fallacy. But he's even wrong about his information. So the earliest source that connects any mistletoe to any sort of like fertility issue comes from Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century. And he says the Gauls in France considered mistletoe sacred if it was found on an oak. We don't put mistletoe on oaks today. So, and it all he says is they thought it would, if taken in drink, would impart fecundity to all animals that are barren, and that it is an antidote for all poisons. So they considered it sacred. That's basically it. So then we have this huge gap. Okay. So we later see, Tanya Gulovich says, a 17th century document speaks of the transport and sale of mistletoe at Christmas, but none mention the custom of kissing under the mistletoe until the 18th century, when some writers suggest that it became a common practice. Okay. In the Dictionary of English Folklore, they say mistletoe became important to the late 18th century as part of the elaborate kissing boughs or bushes hung up in farmhouses and kitchens. No evidence this goes back to paganism, ladies and gentlemen. Seems to be just a late custom. It seems as though churches in the 1600s started decorating with mistletoe, and they said, I mean, there's not a lot of color in Europe around that time. Mistletoe provides a little bit of color. And of course, God made mistletoe. Pagans don't get to just claim it. So that's what we're stuck with. So they started using it. And then apparently that custom of kissing under it came later. No evidence that this goes back to some sort of ancient pagan fertility ritual. Scholars don't say that. So again, Jim is not saying that it's accurate. All right, let me get to some super chats here, and then we're going to move on. So what do we got here? It only states that it was Invictus. It does not even say anything else like soul or birth. Yeah, that is true. So the calendar of Philocalus, which dates to 354, does not say it was the birthday of Sol. However, that's probably the referent. That's probably what it's referring to, because Sol is often paired with Invictus. Could it be referring to something else? Yeah, but I mean, it just seems like it's a shorthand to refer to Sol Invictus, and that seems to be the consensus of what experts say. There are multiple falcon gods called Horus. Horus the elder, sun god, son of Ra, different from Horus the younger, sky god, son of Osiris. Yeah, that's another thing, is that it's a very general name. Horus the god, though, the son of Osiris, was a sky god. He was never a god of the sun. The sun was associated with him, no doubt, because the sun is in the sky. I mean, complain about the date maybe, but how is the Nativity of Christ not biblical holiday? Talking David, not Jim, who is silly. Yeah, I don't agree with David Wilbur on a lot of the Torah observing stuff. I think I follow the church fathers like Ignatius, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, people that were trained by the apostles at the end of the day. And so that's what I go with. And there's a great channel called Two Messianic Jews who have had on this channel before. They've done a lot of stuff responding to Torah observers and just showing how they're just wrong. Now, they are two actual Jewish descent, and they're Christians. They're Messianic Jews. They keep the Torah, but they don't think Gentiles have to. And I agree with them. And so if you want, check out their channel. I tend to cite them a lot for that. Opinion on Eastern Orthodox anti-ecumenism. I've seen some priests say that you can't even pray with the heterodox. They say it's a good uneasiness, but that this and a weird calendar are my biggest hangups with it. So I won't say what my denomination is, but I will say that I do attend a Bible study and an evening prayer at a church, and we have Protestants, Orthodox, Catholic, people come to this. I've never heard any of the Orthodox who come to that say this, and they consider everyone there who's not Orthodox Christian. So you get variety in the church. You know, you'll get Protestants who will say similar things. You get Catholics who will say similar things. Just ignore them. We should all just stand on what Scripture says, even though there's variation and disagreements among traditions. Any books on Jesus versus pagan gods? All I keep hearing is Jesus is just a carbon copy, and I'm trying to get books from experts on these things. Yeah. Thank you for bringing this up, actually, because this is what I was presenting on a few months ago, which pissed off some other of the atheists online who say, well, we don't say copying. Yeah, but this is what we hear, guys. Derek and Neil, this is what we hear. This is why I was responding to it. I know that some of you guys don't say copying, but this is what we constantly hear, like on the streets or like among table talk. So that's what I was responding to. Any good books? So to get like a good surface level, check out The Jesus Legend. That's a good book. They cover that kind of briefly in there. Check out Mark Smith's, if you want to go a little bit deeper, check out Mark Smith, The Origins of Biblical Monotheism. He covers a lot of more in-depth stuff. Maybe also Trygve Mettinger's book on Dying and Rising Gods, The Riddle of Resurrection, I believe it's called. Actually, someone recently gave me some more books that I put on my reading list. Maybe I can get those for you really fast here, because he sent me them on Twitter, and I was like, oh, these look good. They're pretty recent stuff too. So there's one named Theodore Lewis who wrote The Origins and Character of God on talking about dying and rising gods, and he says that there may be just more disappearing gods. I need to check out some more of those books, but that was one that was recently recommended to me. So hopefully that helps. See what we got here. Jesus killed the pagan gods. Why does it matter? Yeah, and that's another thing. Even if there is some sort of pagan traditions in Christmas, who cares? There's nothing sinful about decorating a pine tree. What God was mad about what the pagans did, he was mad about them doing things like child sacrifice or things that were sinful. Okay. He commanded them to build a temple and an ark. Pagans did that kind of stuff all the time. Jolly Viking says, you should come in. I kind of planned this last minute, so I didn't invite you, but I'll send you the link here in a minute. And if you want to jump in, you can. I just can't believe he's doing this again. Wait, yes, I can. Seriously, though, at least respond to our refutations at this point. Yeah, Jim, Jolly Viking was on my channel. I'll send you the link, Will, if you want to jump in here. And he didn't respond to anything. He's just repeating the same lies because he doesn't care, ladies and gentlemen. He wants to spread this misinformation because he wants to scare you. And he's not going to respond to refutations because he doesn't want his audience to see this stuff. I guarantee you that that's part of the motivation. If he responds to this, his audience is going to be aware of this stuff. And he may have a Billy Carson debacle where his audience becomes made aware of critics, and now he's got to deal with that. So put this back in. If you want to jump in, I'm more than happy to have you come in. I didn't even think about inviting you because I was like, I got a lot to go through. I'm just kind of doing this last minute, and I didn't know if you'd have time, and I figured it would be quicker if I just sort of run through this stuff. But if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to come in.
And for those that doubt that Christianity absolutely took pagan holidays and tried to Christianize them, all we have to do is go back to the early 700s, and Saint Bede himself, one of the most respected historians and theologians of his day, he tells us exactly what happened with this Yule Day when he says this. They began, says he, their year on the 8th of the calendars of January, which is now our Christmas party. And the very night before, which is now holy to us, talking about Christmas Eve, was by them called Matternack, or the Night of the Mothers. The Yule log, or he says the Yule clog, therefore hath probably been a part of those ceremonies which were performed that night's ceremonies. It seems to have been used as an emblem of the return of the sun and the lengthening of the days.
Okay. I've read Saint Bede. Saint Bede does not say this. I was racking my head around where he got this from. Now, if you notice, let me put that back up here. He doesn't cite a source. Notice there's no Saint Bede says it in this book. My first thought was maybe it's the reckoning of time. It's not in there. So I Googled the quote to try to figure out where he was getting this. Okay, I found this Wikipedia page. If you go down here, the quote is not from Saint Bede. The quote is from Henry Bourne of 1725. Here's what he says. Okay. For Bede tells us that this very night was observed in the land before by the heathen Saxons. Then we see the quote that Jim takes. They began, says he, their year on the 8th of the calendar of January, which is now our Christmas party. Jim didn't even get the source right. He saw Henry Bourne saying this, and he somehow imagined quotation marks in there, I guess, and just assumed this came from Bede. Bede never says the word Yule. Again, the earliest reference to Yule log is in the late 1600s. This is how bad this is. Like, he didn't even bother to check. And that's why he doesn't put a little source under there saying, oh, yes, Bede said this in this book, because he can't find it. Incredibly bad. Well, I'm going to lose my mind here. What is going on?
Well, what I actually find even funny is I'm wondering what Henry Bourne is even referring to with this.
Yeah.
With this reference. Like, what I still want to know the Bede quote, if I'm being honest. Hang on, let me make it so I don't look like I'm translucent.
You look like you were like coming to us like that child.
I'm still like recovering from the Halloween video. That's not much better. I got nothing.
Well, it looked fine. I'm just gonna turn your mic up a little bit here.
Yeah, that's here. Let me move the thing closer.
Yeah, move your mic closer. This is ridiculous. Okay, much better. Okay, now you look like a civilized human. So yeah, this is he literally just repeated this. Oh, and he's going to make a subtle reference to me later that we're gonna get to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying this stream so far, partially just because of the fact that I didn't know it was going to happen, but I did see this video because, of course, it popped up in my feed. I'm like, not this again.
Yeah, and I like literally planned this yesterday, and I was like rushing, and I was like, I don't have time to. People are gonna be busy. And I got a lot to go through. I'll just go through, but I got through most of his really bad points now, so like, it won't be like super long with us chatting.
Well, the fact that he brings up the exact same quotes, that, like, I'm sure that this is feeling like deja vu for you, because he brings up the exact quotes that we specifically talked about in both of the videos. The Martin of Braga one, the fact that he brought that up again drives me insane. I was surprised that he didn't insist that, well, maybe I just missed this part. Did he insist that Pliny the Elder said that Horus or
yes, he did that all again. He called Horus the sun god, and he said, yeah, Horus was born on the winter solstice. And I played a video that David Wilbur did a few years ago that corrected him on this. And David agreed to take that video down because Jim would correct himself. Jim did not correct himself. He manipulated David. I told David to put the video back up. Hopefully he does.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert in the area, but I did. I looked at the Greek. I consulted people. That there is no way you can say, even like ignoring the whole context still doesn't makes it so that the Horus thing still doesn't work either way. Yeah. But like it doesn't say on the winter solstice. It doesn't. It literally doesn't say that. There's no way you can make it say that. Anyway, now he's attacking my man Bede. Bede is awesome. Yeah. Those of you who have not read Saint Bede, you need to do it. He is. I had a history professor or an English professor in college. He made the point that Bede is the single most educated person 100 years in either direction. Like you can go 100 years before him, 100 years after him. He's the single most educated person in the world. He's an amazing writer.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is just proof positive, again, going all the way back to Egypt with Isis giving birth to the sun god on the winter solstice, to Mithras being born on December 25th, to the 354 birthday on the calendar of the sun god, December 25th, to all the way over here in the 700s, Saint Bede telling us that even in the Germanic cultures, the Scandinavian cultures, that Odin's followers themselves had this day set apart, and the Christians were trying to take it over. Now, I know that sounds righteous, and it sounds like that's the right thing to do. We're taking over the enemy territory. But the question really is,
Indeed.
are we allowed to do that? Does God
Yes.
want us to take over a holiday that used to be pagan and Christianize it, throw a little holy water on it, and then offer it up to God?
Well, actually,
Yes.
so this is an interesting thing, because I think that this really shows the fundamentally different theological tradition that Jim has compared to what even just Christians in general have always thought. So I, for those of you who don't know, I'm not sure why you wouldn't know this at this point. I'm Catholic. Catholicism traditionally has always had this idea of reclaiming more and more of the world
Right.
from the city of man and bringing it into the city of God. That's like that is like one of the main aspects of the temporal mission of the church. Saving souls, absolutely, that's a major part. That's part of the program, so to say. But you get to see some interesting things where dedicating Christian, like buildings for Christian usage, or land that was for land that used to be pagan, you would actually exorcise it. You would have an exorcism on it to cast out the demons. You would be officially reclaiming aspects of the world, physically as well as culturally and all that stuff, away from the devil and bringing it into the kingdom of God. That is part of the mission of Christianity. That's what we are supposed to be doing. And the fact that he thinks that's a bad thing, it's hilarious.
Well, it's ridiculous. Like this whole like fear that like, oh no, a pagan touched a tree, therefore that tree is eternally evil, is just his mentality. Like pagans get to claim this day of the year. I'm like, I thought God made all the days of the year. So
and it's not even the same tree. Like, I don't even mean it's not the same type of tree. I mean, like, the fact that pagans used oaks or whatever doesn't mean that the oak trees that you have growing in your yard are like profane and you're not allowed to use them.
Well, yeah, it's also like
cultural.
Here's my question for someone like Jim. What if we had a time machine and we could actually go back and we could see that Jesus was actually born on December 25th? Right. I know they think, well, it can't be in the winter because the shepherds were in the field. Bad argument. We're talking about a desert here.
It's also not true.
Yeah, it's a bad argument. But let's just say we could. True. Are you guys going to be like, well, why would Jesus do that? He's so sinful being born on December 25th. Right. How dare he? Doesn't he know the Egyptians had a temple and they aligned it with the sun so that it shone through this part of the winter soul? He should have picked a different day to be born. Like, are you guys really that crazy? Like, who cares what pagans are doing? We'll pick our days based on our needs, based on what we think Christ has set up for us. So screw you guys. We're going to go do our own holidays. Like, who cares what the pagans are doing?
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going along.
Let's see what he has to say in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 30 and 32. God. It says this: take heed to yourself that you're not ensnared to follow after them, after they're destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I will do so likewise. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way. For every abomination to the Lord which he hates they have done to their gods, for they even burn their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add or take away from it. Now, what's this saying? Basically, the Israelites are going into the land, the promised land, and he says, you're going to see the pagans. Don't figure out how they worship their gods and try to worship me that way. Don't take their altars and try to clean them up and put some new gold and silver on them and offer them to me. Don't do it. It's an abomination to me because I was there when they offered their children in the fires to Molech. It will be offensive to me if you try to Christianize any of those pagan items. Do things the way I taught you, says the Lord. And that's exactly what we're doing today with Christmas. But
that's right, folks. When you decorate a pine tree, it's exactly the same as offering your child up in fire. It's this is what God is so mad about. He's like up here, it's like child sacrifice and decorating a pine tree, and then below it you may be stealing and murder. But no, up there, two things so evil. Oh my God. The association fallacies are beyond me. He's talking about, God is talking about the detestable things. Like he gives an example. Like again, pagans built temples. God said, build me a temple. Pagans had priests. God said, I want priests. Like not everything they do is necessarily evil. It's the detestable things. Jim is just generalizing and making these ridiculous association fallacies because he needs it to say this so he can scare people into following him.
Mm-hmm. And this is a more controversial point, and I acknowledge that. But to a certain degree, the concept of gods, like God is in a certain way a pagan concept. When we were in like the Garden of Eden, we didn't view God as a god, so to say, or even necessarily as we view him now. When God becomes the God of the Israelites, he is effectively taking the relevant cultural concept that they were all in and saying, well, I will be your God. I will be the God for you. And then he used that to progressively reveal that not only is he the most important, but that the other gods aren't things you should worship, basically. Like the concept of temples, like, I mean, you mentioned it, like the concept of temples, the concept of priests, sacrifices, all these things. In many ways, they are pagan ideas. They are pagan ideas. And even in the Old Testament, God is using these pagan ideas as a means of, well, sanctifying them. He's like, you're getting rid of the bad aspects of them, and you are making them into an acceptable form of worship, an acceptable form of recognition about who God is and stuff like that.
But let's keep going. We've got a lot to go through. All right, if we're going to talk about Christmas, we definitely have to talk about Santa Claus and where did he come from? Now, I know that originally we've been told that it comes from St. Nicholas and the Catholic Church, but there's a lot of scholarship that says that he may or may not have even ever existed. But we don't have to even debate that.
St. Nick never existed.
Sorry. What is he like? What scholarship, Jim? Please tell me the scholarship that says Nicholas did not exist as a bishop. Like, really? He just makes that comment. A lot of scholarship that I clearly never have read says this. Oh, sure, okay.
Because we have another figure that just so eerily goes right down the line in characteristics of Santa Claus, and that is in the Norse legends of Odin. The god Odin, that's right, the famous father of Thor from the Avengers, of course. And let's find out a little bit more about him. Odin was the Scandinavian god of intoxication, ecstasy, and the god of death. Every year on the winter solstice, he would take his 8-legged white horse and fly across the night sky to warn and punish children that have not been good that year.
No.
Does that sound familiar?
No, that's not what happened.
Okay, first of all, just the errors are piling up. First of all, the god of death in Norse mythology is a goddess named Hel.
Hel, right.
And
who literally rules in an underworld. Like, he's basically the Hades of Norse mythology. Anyway. Yeah.
Now, Odin did have an 8-legged horse called like Sleipnir or something like that. But a lot of the information on the Norse legends wasn't really written down until the 13th century AD by Snorri Sturluson in the Poetic and Prose Edda. And a lot of scholars will tell you that may have a lot of Christian influence, but he's not like flying through the air to give gifts to children. That doesn't happen in either of those works. I don't know where Jim is getting this from, let alone on the winter solstice.
Right, exactly. Which, by the way, for those of you who haven't read at least the Prose Edda, I would recommend it. It's actually I think it's kind of fun.
It's definitely fun to read, yeah.
It's definitely fun. I like the adventures of Thor. That's my favorite part.
He's also the god of wisdom, the god of occult knowledge, runes, poetry, and war, and his name means the inspired one. He was a tall old man, apparently, that had a long white beard and carried a spear or crozier. Now, and you connect all this together and start looking at the pattern and the characteristics that find themselves in our modern day Santa Claus. It's actually very scary because you have Odin, who is on a white horse, just like Jesus has said, it come on a white horse at the end of time.
Oh, you see that? You see that, ladies and gentlemen? He has proved that Jesus is pagan because he is on a white horse, just like Odin. You see? There's no way you get around this now. The Bible is pagan. White horse connection right there. Done. Like, Jim just sort of makes this and he doesn't realize the same reasoning debunks him here. Like, just because there's a white horse in the Bible and with Odin, it doesn't mean Jesus is getting the white horse from paganism. If Santa rides a white horse, why is he getting that from Odin? Like, he just passes over this without realizing the implications here.
Yeah. I do love Jim Staley basically saying that, Jesus is pagan. That wasn't on my bucket list, if I'm being honest.
It wasn't. Yeah, he implicitly said
But
it.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Horse at the end of time, but it's an 8-legged white horse. To the ancients, 8 was the number of transportation. And it's interesting to find out that Santa Claus ends up with 8 reindeer. Now, in the 20th century, they added a 9th reindeer called Rudolph, but originally there was only 8. Also, Odin has these dark.
Real quick, I can't find any evidence that 8 was a number of transportation. I have no idea where he gets this stuff from. He just makes these comments and like, where is this coming from?
Well, there's a multitude of funny aspects about that, and that, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong about this. So if someone wants to correct me, I'd be all ears for it. Numerology wasn't that big of a thing among the Norse and Germanic peoples.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a huge aspect of the Semitic cultures. Like, you see it all over with the with the Hebrews, the Babylonians, even the Assyrians. I'm pretty sure it's a massive aspect of their culture. You see it less in a lot of European pagan cultures. So it does exist to a very limited degree, in my experience, in the Greek and the Roman cultures compared to Semitic cultures. It might exist in Norse mythology, or it might exist in Norse paganism. I can't think of an example, is what I would say. But also, the funny thing about, well, Santa originally had 8 reindeer. No, he didn't. He originally had 1 reindeer. And that concept, and the concept of connecting the reindeer to Santa Claus, I'm pretty sure the earliest example of it is in the early 1700s.
1800s, yeah.
Oh, 1800s even. It's not even close to being relevant. I don't even think it has anything to do with, like, it's not even in Norway or Sweden or Denmark or any of those countries. There is no connection there. Might have been in America from what I remember. Maybe England, but
yeah, I could put the image up here because I got it. This is the earliest image. You see Santa with 1 reindeer. This is from the early 1800s, and he's in red because that's how the traditional Dutchmen of the time dressed in New York. That's basically how it looks. So no, it wasn't 8. Jim is wrong here. It was 1.
It eventually became 8, but that has nothing to do with Norse paganism.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I can't take the, like, I know we haven't been taking this seriously, but I can't just continue.
Dark helpers that end up being the elves of Santa Claus, and they're going across the night sky once a year during the time of Yule for 12 days to punish and warn the children who've been bad that year. There is definitely a connection. What do you think? Put it in the comments. All right, let's fast forward to what they say the real Santa Claus comes from, which is the Saint Nicholas. But interestingly enough, these Krampus demons go with Saint Nicholas throughout village to village, and this Krampus demons are punishing the children that are bad, and Saint Nicholas is giving gifts to the ones that are good. So you have this good cop, bad cop relationship that's happening. This is what evolves into the elves that are tricky and doing mischievous things. It goes all the way back to real time Saint Nicholas, the Krampus demons, and the Krampus demons come from the dark helpers that are assisting Odin as he travels across the sky during what we call Christmas time.
Okay, yeah, there's no evidence.
Convinces me all the more that we need to actually just ban AI.
Yeah, that's some creepy images he's got there. But yeah, there's no evidence for what he's talking about here. Like, these are the early images of Krampus, and they're on cards from like the 1800s. Okay, they're not going back to paganism. They're just medieval depictions of the devil, obviously. So Spencer McDaniel wrote a whole,
like, modern depictions of the devil.
Right. And Spencer McDaniel notes, it seems to me that Krampus is indeed a genuine holdover from an earlier time, but he's not a holdover from ancient paganism. Instead, he's a holdover from late medieval Catholicism.
Fair enough.
Krampus, as he is portrayed in the late 19th and early 20th century depictions, is the very spitting image of the hideous tongue-lolling, horn, cloven-hooven, shackled, mischief-making devil of the high and late Middle Ages. Ultimately, I think there is some influence from ancient paganism, specifically from the Greek god Pan on Krampus, but it's very indirect. In other words, depictions of Pan influence how people in the Middle Ages depicted the devil, and that influenced the Krampus tradition ultimately. It's honestly not pagan.
Yeah, honestly, a good Like a good corollary to this is actually more the gargoyles that you see at various churches, rather than even, I would even argue, rather than Pan, that the gargoyles very much end up becoming their own thing at that decorate churches. Now maybe that just proves that we Catholics really are Satanists. We're worshiping
Yeah,
a bunch
sure
of
does.
demonic images. Oh my.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some super chats here, then we'll continue on. I remember you saying that 1 Timothy 2 is a mistranslation. Recently, you said women can be pastors. What specific scholars change your mind? So my position is I don't think a woman can be the head of a church because of 1 Timothy 3. I think that needs to be a man based on what Paul says there. However, I do think they can be teachers, is what I was arguing. And I think you see this with Unia in Romans. And even John Chrysostom said that she was a woman. This is a woman they're speaking of, and she was an apostle. So the church tradition is this was a woman teacher in the early church. You also have Phoebe as well, who was a deaconess and these kinds of things. So I think women can have serving and teaching roles in churches, although I don't think they can be the head of a church. Pagan nationalism is just salty dawa of pagan Europeans. They lie about Christianity and try to take our heritage from us. Absolutely. That's the whole thing. They're trying desperately to reclaim like some sort of ancient paganism of the past. And so they cling on to things like maybe it's Christmas trees, maybe it's Easter eggs, and they just make these logical leaps that, oh, these must go back to paganism. Therefore, there really are traditions, and they don't do the history.
Well, I mean, it's partially just because of the fact that Christianity has really put paganism into quite a bind, because we have made it so that even the idea of priestly like robes and vestments is abhorrent to pagans. Like they can't do that anymore. Why? Because that's a Christian thing now. Like you can't do that anymore. Well, specifically because of like the Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodoxy and stuff like that. But I mean, even Anglicanism, like that's a Christian thing. The idea of having like a divine person, like all the divine God man feature that was so prevalent throughout. Okay, I'm going to be misquoted here. I'm not saying that there are these exact parallels like with God men and stuff like that, but you do have God men in the sense of like pagan rulers. Pagan, like the pharaohs are God men. They are men who are also God. The Roman emperors were God men, especially once you get to Diocletian, people like that. We have the actual God man, God become man, and stuff like that. Having a God man is too much of a Christian thing at this point. And so pagans need to do like a weird mixture of like Siberian animism with like while wearing antlers, bathing in blood, and some inspiration taken from like North American Indian groups and stuff like that. And it's not even really those traditions themselves. And so now we have this idea of like paganism is convulsing on the floor with your eyes shooting back into your skull and stuff like that. Because why? Well, because there's not much left for pagans. Pagans can't do much else. They have to go to the disgusting aspects of human history and not even the good elements of the paganism that they think existed.
Yeah, and Jim is trying to make sure the pagans get more by giving them pine trees and
by giving them pine trees.
If they get trees and they get December 25th, according to these people, it's like they want to give the devil ground. Jim is like doing the devil's work, and he doesn't even realize. I blame Puritans for claiming Christmas is pagan. They were a big problem, but it also the Eastern Orthodox Church claiming that the Westerners were using a pagan day in the 1200s and the 1100s. Like they started that, the East-West split caused a lot of accusations and bad ones sort of go out there. Answering LDS is calling you discount apologia.
I'm starting to get a little offended by that. Not really, but it's one of those things where it's like I've started to become, as I can no longer take apologia with any seriousness, comparisons between the two of us are making me sad, even though I know it's based on looks.
How do you know quantum fields aren't created? Well, they're part of the material reality. We have no evidence to think that they are eternal, past. So the contingency problems, and even if they are, they're not like a material thing. They're just information. They would have to be contingent upon some sort of substance or mind. So even if they are, they're just like the eternal thoughts of God, perhaps you could say, something like that. So it doesn't really matter ultimately. But yeah. The worst part of it is he's saying it's from the Romans and Norse. It's obviously stolen from Han Tao. You're right. It's from the Taoists. Yeah, the Han Taoists. I mean, clearly, you probably find some weird thing they did that the Christians are like, we're going to steal that and then transport it hundreds of miles across the Middle East.
Not the Nestorians, but Church of the East and all that.
For Hebrew roots, it's all about doing what the Bible says to do and not what's necessarily in it. If the nativity celebration was in the Bible, I would expect Hebrew roots to celebrate it. Merry Christmas and Hanukkah. So yeah, that's a lot of their arguments, but it's also like, listen, Paul is very clear in 1 Corinthians 7. If you're among the uncircumcised, stay there. If you're of the circumcised, stay there. I mean, Acts 15, they send this thing out to the Gentiles, do this thing. And then they never like update them later. Oh, by the way, now you got to do this. James does not say that later to Paul in, I believe it's Acts 21 or something like that. So like, I mean, again, go check out the channel, The Two Messianic Jews. They've responded to these Torah Observer arguments and have shown that, no, we Gentiles don't have to keep them. So we're good.
Also, Hanukkah is in the Bible. I'm not even talking about Maccabees. I'm talking about Jesus celebrates Hanukkah in the book of John.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I heard you're doing a talk this Saturday, which is my birthday on December 21st. Does my birthday have pagan origins now? It does. Yeah, I'm doing a private. I'm doing a private Q&A. So anybody who becomes a donor, there's a Patreon link below. You can join the private Q&A, and I answer every single question in the live chat. So that's only for donors. So you got to be a donor to come to that one. So if you guys can make it, I appreciate it. We always need the donation support. Because we're trying to fund for the next year and we are definitely behind. So anything you guys can give would be great. But let's get back to Jim lying to his audience, and will continue to ignore us because he knows he doesn't want to expose us to his audience.
That would be devastating.
In hundreds in Holland, his name changes to Sinterklaas. He's a kind and wise old man with a white beard, white dress, red cloak, a crozier, and riding the skies and roofs of the houses on none other than his white horse, the same white horse that Odin had, I would bet, accompanied by his blackjacks. Now,
okay, before we get to the blackjacks, Sinterklaas literally means Saint Nicholas. Does not mean Odin. You can see it in the words. It's a shortening of Saint Nicholas. This isn't complicated.
I don't, and I love the the caption at the bottom. Origins of Santa Claus from Odin to Center Klaus.
Yeah.
He spelled it right in the video, but he didn't spell it right in the timestamps.
Well, yeah, I guess not. Those are his timestamps.
From Odin to Center Klaus.
Is it in there? Where am I looking for? 1901. So it looked, Center Klaus. There it is. Yep. Oh, well. I mean, we all make those mistakes. I wouldn't get him on that one.
They're called blackjacks, leaving gifts for people under his sacred tree. And guess what his sacred tree was? The fir tree. By the 1700s, a Dutchman brings this Sinterklaas to the United States, to America. From there, Coca-Cola claims that they took Sinterklaas, added their company colors, and out came the modern-day Santa Claus.
Well, if Coca-Cola says it, that must be true.
First of all, the tree sacred to Odin was the oak. You can leave. It's in the Prose Edda. It's in Tales of Saint Boniface. It's the oak. It's not the fir tree. So Jim is just wrong there.
It's literally It's literally like the whole point of the Boniface story, Saint Boniface story, where he cuts down the sacred oak to Odin, which indicates that this was a pan-Germanic concept. Is that the oak was specifically associated with Odin.
Yeah. But they say in the Dictionary of English Folklore, St. Nicholas popularized through a poem by Clement Clark Moore, The Visit of St. Nicholas in 1822. Now, Moore's work is usually called The Night Before Christmas. Okay. Moore describes a saint not as a bishop in a red coat, but as in Holland, but as a fat man dressed in fur driving a reindeer sleigh. During the rest of the 19th century, Santa was often shown in a red jacket, but with the blue knickerbockers as befits a Dutchman in the 20th century. An all red outfit with white trimmings became the norm, especially after the Coca-Cola advertising. So Jim has left out a lot of the history here. He was dressed in red before this with one reindeer, as we showed you earlier, and eventually Coca-Cola gave him his modern get up. But I mean, no, it's not just that. And again, the red comes from, again, that he was a saint. The saint would wear red. It's like, dude, like, this isn't
Especially
complicated
a martyr,
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a martyr. So, like, what are you talking about?
The fascinating thing there is, I do like the fact, this is more of a side comment, but I do love the fact that the specifically modern look for Santa Claus comes from capitalism, in the form of Coca-Cola. That I feel like that's fitting, given how just utterly besmirched our great Saint Nicholas has become. Anyway, that's more of my
now. Here's something that'll absolutely send chills down your spine. If you want to know where the ho 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 came from, well, in the history of the Hobgoblin, author Alan W. Wright reveals that, quote, Robin itself, talking about Robin Goodfellow, Robin itself was a medieval nickname for the devil, and Robin's trademark laugh was ho ho ho. My friends,
wow,
you can't make this stuff up. Santa Claus comes from Odin, and the ho 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 comes from a play back in the 1600s where the devil, before he appeared on stage, would do his trademark laugh.
Ho, ho, ho. God!
Chills.
So bad. Chills.
I've got.
I tried
chills. I don't know about you, Mike.
I tried to track that down because the way Jim spoke about it, he made it sound like it was a book. It's actually like a blog article. Let me see why this is not loading.
Yeah.
There it is. So this is the article, as you can see. And if you the quote he put on the screen is not in like one place. So like you can see like down here, Robin's trademark laugh with ho ho ho, but that was not the rest of the quote Jim had on the screen. So he took bits and pieces and connected it together. The problem is that in the medieval period and in the Middle Ages, ho 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 was just a general expression to represent laughing. Like that's just what people did. Didn't even get picked up and associated with Santa until 1905 in a story called Santa Claus and the Mouse. That's the very first time Santa says ho ho ho. The idea that it like someone in 1905 was like, I know what to do. I'll give Santa, who's really Odin, okay, 100 years after Santa Claus became a thing, this laugh from a devil from a play hundreds of years earlier. Like that's Jim's logic here. Like
Mike, you don't understand. You see, what's actually happening is Satan actually does laugh using ho ho ho, and he actually did manifest as Odin in history. And therefore, what Satan is doing is he is combining all these different elements: his Odin self, his ho ho ho, his red suit, or because he's usually depicted in red tights.
Yeah.
And he's combining those so that way we worship him by means of Santa Claus. Because really that's how this mindset works, is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when ho 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 or when the reindeer came into the story, because ultimately Satan uses reindeer. This is a fact. Few know this, but Satan just uses reindeer, and he uses them either an 8-legged reindeer or 8 reindeer, because 8 is a very important number to Satan.
Apparently,
and
it's in Revelation though. Alpha and Omega. Omega is 8. I mean,
yeah, but. So it doesn't matter that there is no actual connection there. It doesn't matter that temporally no one was thinking. It's the same thing with like the King James Onlyists and the whole thing of like, oh, well, it doesn't matter how the textual variants probably came into being in the first place, because what actually happened was Satan mind-controlled people to make those textual variants because of the fact that he's trying to destroy the Word of God.
Yeah, it's all part of the evil plan, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
And the entire time, we are feeding all of this to our children. The devil himself has packaged all of this in a way that we would just swallow it, hook, line, and sinker. even the cookies.
What is the Satan's evil plan? So let me just run through this in Jim's mind. Okay, guys, I got a genius plan. I'm gonna get him to decorate pine trees and say ho ho ho, and then they'll go to hell. Like what? Like this is Jim's weird, insane logic here that somehow if you kiss your spouse under a mistletoe, Satan's going, I win. Like what is this insanity?
I love the idea that Satan would be okay with taking reverence that is supposed to be going to him and giving it to a saint.
Yeah.
I love that idea. That's amazing. I'm not sure I could come up with
that are left at the chimney for Santa Claus when he comes down. Where and why did we come up with the legend that Santa Claus comes down through a chimney? Let's go find out.
Oh, God.
It says right here, the belief that Santa enters the house through the chimney developed from an old Norse legend. The Norse believed that the goddess Hertha appeared in the fireplace and brought good luck to the home. Druid homeowners would then leave a treat consisting of milk and pastries to appease this god that came down into their chimney into their fireplace.
Okay, so World Book Encyclopedia is really just not a good source. It's outdated. It's like from 1917. That's when the first edition was published. Okay, the first reference to Santa being left milk and cookies is from a short story called Polly, A Before Christmas Story. I can find no primary sources to back this kind of stuff up. And even if it does, again, we can go back to where milk and cookies comes from for Christmas. It's the 1870s. What, did someone just find some ancient pagan reference and then, oh, I know what to do? Like, you got to actually show the actual causal link that doesn't exist here.
Right.
Almost everything that's connected to Christmas seems to go back right to paganism. I don't know if we're okay with that, but check this out. We're going to compare Yeshua, Jesus Christ, with Santa Claus. And
okay, I hate when Torah observers do this. It's not Yeshua in the first century. It most likely would have been Yeshu or Yeshu. That's why when the name was transliterated into Greek, it's Jesus, not Yesusa. It's Jesus because they probably were saying Yeshu.
Although I think it is useful to note that like the Septuagint does translate Joshua's name, like the book of Joshua, as Jesus as well, or Jesus. I need to stop turning that sigma into a Z, but whatever. Yeah, it's just a useful point. Anyway, continue.
If you can see the difference in how the enemy just so slightly is mocking our Savior. Watch this. Santa Claus has no beginning or end, apparently, just like Christ. He has his own eternal spirit called the Spirit of Christmas. He's all-knowing. He writes their names, all these little children's names, in a book. His hair is white as snow, and he travels during the night. He wants to give you everything that your flesh desires. He enters your house through fire, and he has a mystical tree. On the other side of that, though, we see that Christ has no beginning or end. He has his own eternal spirit. He's all-knowing. He writes everyone's name in a book. His hair is as white as snow, except he travels during the day. He doesn't want to give you everything that your flesh desires. He wants to give you what you need. He enters your house through blood, and he has a tree as well. It's called the Tree of Life. It's the...
This is like what like Jesus mythicists do with like, let me just put up Dionysus and Jesus and go through, oh, look at all the things that look similar. Oh, you got you. Like, this is beyond insanity. This is parallelomania. And it's like, dude, like, how do you know this is just like, first of all, not everyone says that stuff about Santa. If you like tell your kids about Santa, you don't have to affirm he's eternal or that he's like all knowing. I mean, like, yeah, some people do that, but those are not necessary aspects of the Santa tradition. He just assumed like folklore aspects or like things that you have to believe about Santa. It's absurd.
Yeah, this is like the other direction for, I'm going to read 5 books of the Iliad and pick out like 17 lines from them and compare them to 5 verses in Mark.
You've looked at Dennis McDonald too, haven't you? You've looked at Dennis McDonald too, haven't you?
This is supposed to be a subtle reference.
No, not on this channel. Pretty soon. wait until January's over. They're really gonna not like me.
Nora,
I can't
that's in the
imagine that they
temple of
like you
God.
at this point anyway.
Oh no, they've been using like false information to try to defame me, and then it blew up in their faces, and so.
Yeah.
But now it's gonna get worse because now that kind of like sealed the deal. All bets are off. I'm just going all in, so we'll see.
That
Yes,
is the original tree, the seven spirits of God that connect to the seven continents on Earth, and this is exactly why the ancients believed that it was the trees that.
Sorry, we were talking. Can you back up a bit? I feel like I missed a video. What
Let's back.
Happened? Like,
let me back up here a little bit.
Nora, that's in the temple of God. That is the original tree, the seven spirits of God that connect to the seven continents on Earth, and this is exactly why the ancients believed that it was the trees that the spirits lived in the trees. And if they connect and worship the spirits through the trees, then they would be able to see in the spirit. Can you?
Jim says the menorah represents the seven continents on Earth. What is he talking about? I don't know any scholar who would make that claim.
And any Jewish listeners, could you like?
No, they didn't know about Antarctica.
Offer like some opinion on that statement. I'm genuinely curious. It's like, what do you make of it when someone says that? I don't think the thing is that I don't think that they believe the biblical authors had agency or knowledge when it came to writing the Bible. They were like mind controlled effectively. And so it doesn't matter that the ancient Israelites didn't know about Antarctica or the Americas for that matter. Because God, well, no, that doesn't work. No, I thought of that more. No, that doesn't work here, because he's saying like the connection is like seven, and the seven continents. First off, there aren't seven continents. Depending on how you count, they're anywhere between like 5 to 20. Just saying, like 7 continents is what the libs call a social construct, if you will.
It is. It's a social construct, because you look at Europe and Asia; they're connected, like in a big bang way. It's ridiculous. This is just associations fallacies. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you get from, again, the McDonald's stuff, or the Jesus mythicists, or you know, other people like that. It's same kind of thing, just on the other side.
Right.
See how the enemy has so manipulated the word of God and mocked it through all of these legends. Even the Oxford English Dictionary says this about the word devil. The devil is called Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, and in popular rustic speech, believe it or not, is called Old Nick. If you need any more proof that Santa Claus is definitely connected to the Old Norse god Odin, then I don't know what to say. Because
okay, notice the sleight of hand. The devil's called Old Nick. Santa Claus is called Old Saint Nick. It's not the same. He just like, it's so close enough so he can go with it, is what he's basically doing there.
I genuinely, I feel like I need to see proof that anyone has ever called the devil Old Nick. I'm not even willing to, I'd like to see some evidence of that.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I mean, it's not the same. It's Old Saint Nick.
Right.
Santa is called Old Saint Nick, not Old Nick. So he's just there's a sleight of hand there to try to like fool his audience. And
because this is extraordinary that Odin is found its way into our homes and churches right next to baby Jesus in the Nativity. My friends, not only does the Bible absolutely forbid us to take a pagan festival and change it around and give it a new meaning and then offer it up to God like some pig that we put lipstick on and then sacrifice it because we like bacon and expect God to be okay with it. Well, it seems as if our early founders knew exactly that. The very thing that we've forgotten, they knew, which is why they forbid it. Take a look at this quote by the Massachusetts Bay Colony Government Court on May 11th, 1659. It says this.
No, they outlawed Christmas because they thought it was pagan, but their reasoning was it's too Catholic.
Right.
That was
Catholic for pagan.
It was also too Catholic, therefore pagan.
I didn't realize this until now, or if I did, I forgot it. Does he think eating pork is forbidden or shellfish?
Yes. I'm gonna eat some pork tomorrow in honor of him. I'm gonna wake up, have some bacon, maybe some sausage.
Yep, I'm
Yeah.
making some sausage tomorrow and stuff like that, and some ham.
Yeah.
We're having ham this Saturday, actually. Oh,
Good.
fun.
Yeah.
It's a great Christmas tradition of ours.
Yeah, it's absurd. He's a anti, he thinks Christians have to keep like basically the Mosaic law.
Right.
And again, absurd. A lot of problems there, but like
very contrary to the New Testament, one might say.
Yeah, I would argue that. I don't have time to get into that. Maybe we should do something.
I'm sure he has an alternate interpretation for every verse.
Yeah. So I'm moving ahead because it just goes over some American stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. The Americans were anti-Catholic early on. That's why they were outlawing Christmas. He's just misunderstood the referent here. But I want to play like a little bit more. And wait, let me back up a little bit. I want to go back to, here's what I have here. Okay.
Stop just making it all about us and saying that it's not what it means to us and caring about the emotional system and all of our memories. Can you imagine a Christian church having a Baphomet symbol as their church logo, having no clue the demonic origins of that symbol?
Okay, no one has their symbol as a Christmas pine tree. I mean, like, I'd be annoyed if I went to a church and their symbol was an American flag or a picture of Jim. Like, it's like obviously like these are just wrong because the center should be Christ, not America or Christmas. Like everyone will be annoyed by that, but that doesn't mean it's pagan, and that doesn't mean you can't have a pine tree in a church.
Right.
Like this is absurd.
If you see a church that has like Santa Claus as its primary symbol or something like that, that would be bad. That should not be the case. That obviously the cross or an icon of Christ or something along those lines, those should be the main symbol of the church for obvious reasons. And you miss the point if that's the case, if you don't have those things as the center.
Would it be okay because they didn't know? Would they be able to get away with it and say, well, that's not what it means to me? Can you imagine another Christian church having the demonic satanic star and confusing it with the Davidic star, thinking that they're supporting Israel? Would it be okay? You would do everything that you could to show them this is not okay. It doesn't matter what your heart is until you're in obedience.
So real quick, the 5-pointed star is actually used in Jewish Apocrypha texts about Solomon. Like the Testament of Solomon, I think he's got a ring that's 5-pointed star that he uses to trap demons. Forget the exact name of the work, but just because pagans have claimed a star, that doesn't mean the star is therefore evil. Is the American flag filled with like satanic pagan stars? Because they're 5-pointed? Obvious. Like this is just absurd.
Yeah.
It's
the upside down cross thing again. Granted, there's a difference between like an upside down cross and an upside down crucifix, but like still.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I did a video on that, like Satanists using the upside down cross. It's the cross of St. Peter.
It's very cringe.
It's funny.
It's like Edward level cringe.
Yeah. Or they'll do like the cross of St. Andrew. I've seen them.
That one's even better. That's my favorite.
Yeah. It's just like, they don't know what they're doing.
They have no idea what they're using. Just straight up plain using Christian symbols.
Okay. Now, Will, we have responded to Jim before on this. I think he knows. And here's why. Because listen to what he's about to say here.
What you've just seen. Now, I know there'll be philosophers out there that pretend to be Christians. They will defend their traditions and this holiday to their core. But it's
who could he be talking about there? I don't know.
I love being called a philosopher. That's great. I love it.
We're not really Christians according to Jim, because
Well, I'm probably really not a Christian.
Oh,
because I'm an open Catholic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm pretty sure he'd be in that boat where he would think the Catholics are not really Christian, which is absurd and stupid.
But are we Antichrist? Because if we're not, he's not. He's pulling his punches, man.
Well, at the end of the day, one of us is committing a horrible sin of lying for selfish gains. Others are correcting him, but we're the ones who are not Christians. Like Jim reminds me of the Pharisees. Like oh, look at how holy I am, God. I'm keeping the feast. I'm keeping kosher laws. I'm keeping the Sabbath. And Jesus comes and says, you have forgotten what these things were about. Like,
Right.
it just makes me think of that. What is that verse? I wanted to pull it up. I think it's there's a verse, I think it's in like Amos. I despise your feasts. I take no delight in your solemn assemblies.
Right.
This idea about you offer up these sacrifices and I detest them because your heart is not in the right place. You don't really love me. You love the glory you get from doing these things. And this is what makes me think of Jim. I hope I'm wrong, but this is what I'm getting is that look at how holy I am. It doesn't matter that I'm lying. It doesn't matter that I'm using manipulation. What matters is that I look so holy before the people and before God because I keep the feasts. I keep the Sabbath. And that's what's really important. And meanwhile, he's breaking moral laws, which Amos says is really bad.
Anytime you have a person or a group of people who routinely lie, whether it just be in general or even worse about someone else or about another group of people, and when someone points out and demonstrates the fact that they're lying, they and their followers get angry at the person who's trying to show them the truth rather than the person who's lying. That's a problem. Obviously that's a problem, but that's like it is a cult at that point where you are willing to just simply ignore the truth when it is literally slapped right across your face, and you're willing to just simply turn away from it, no further consideration, not willing to even consider what the fact that you've been lied to and you stick with the lie. That's a cult. And that, like, for anyone who is in any of those situations, because some of your audience that might be in a parallel situation that's not necessarily this one, but whenever you detect that in other people, whenever you detect that in yourself, you need to get them and yourself out of that situation. I have a friend who was very badly affected by this sort of life with her family and stuff like that. So
yeah, glad you're out of the Hebrew roots cult as well. I mean, I wouldn't call it a cult, but I know people in that they're a lot more sophisticated, have better arguments, and not happy with what Jim does. But yeah, I disagree.
I wouldn't say that the Hebrew roots. I'm not talking specifically about the Hebrew roots movement. But anyone who does what Staley is doing,
right?
They are creating a cult, or they're a part of one.
Yeah. All right. So I just started a new goal. We're gonna get to some super chats here. If you guys, 2 have come in since I started the goal. So if you guys get 7 more super chats, I will show you my cat again, because I know you guys go crazy when I show you a cat. So so far we need another 7 to see the cat. Otherwise, we're not going to see the cat since I started this. So if you get me another 7, you get to see a cat tonight. Until then, we'll start going through some super chats here. Coffee House Dialogue says, okay, let's add mead and whiskey to eggnog to troll him. I bet. I don't think Jim even drinks. Maybe he does. I don't know. I would say probably not, but yeah, I
would respect him a little bit more if he allowed the drinking of alcohol.
There was you don't know this though, but there was a time when I almost would have met him. And luckily I couldn't, because my daughter was being born around the time this event was going on. And so we just couldn't do it. We were living in Arizona. We were supposed to go up for an event and he was going to be there. And like, this was long before any interaction, before he went to prison. And but yeah, I have a connection to him because that. So
nice.
Jim, better hope AI art isn't pagan. Well, it's creepy as hell. Let's be honest.
I think that there's a much better argument that using AI is pagan, or at least satanic, than anything involving Christmas. And I mean anything involving Christmas, including all the secular stuff.
Yeah. Hey, IP, love your live streams and videos. They've helped me a lot. A bit off topic, but do you know of any good books against Christian nationalism or Holocaust denial? So
lots of good books against Holocaust denial, but not specifically targeted towards Holocaust deniers.
So there was I can't remember the guy's name, but What was that?
That was a coin.
Okay. Well, there's a great article where someone reviewed a critique of A Case for Christian Nationalism. Let me see if I can find So I'm trying to remember. It was like his name started with an N, and I cannot remember the name of that the article he had. I'll try to find it. But yeah,
there are a couple of good videos
yeah,
actually against like Holocaust denial. One of them is a video arguing against Redeemed Zoomer. Now, unfortunately, I think YouTube turned off the comments, so feeding into that narrative that.
Like, yeah. Here, I'll put this up on screen. I just found it. Oh, so nice. This is a long review of Wolf's Case for Christian Nationalism.
I might have said Redeemed Zoomer. I meant to say it was a channel arguing against Zoomer historian. Sorry. Okay. Redeem Zoomer. I did not mean to say that, I promise. But yeah.
Yeah, this is a good article. It's long. It's not a book, but I think it's a pretty good place to start. I should debate a Christian nationalist eventually. I think I might enjoy that. So maybe down the road I can do that. I have some studies I want to use. I don't go into debate without studies, and I have studies against Christian nationalism I can use. So Saint Nick never existed. I was prepared for crazy, but that really threw me off. I'm like, who in their right mind would say that Saint Nicholas didn't exist? I'm like, really? Like, I don't think we have any sources from his life. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, like, still, like, why would they make him up?
To be fair, we don't have the best documentation that he actually existed. If someone was approaching it from like just a general historical skeptical point of view, I could see an argument that Saint Nick didn't exist. I think that all those are rather silly, but I'm also like a sanctoral maximist. I made that term up. I believe that a lot of saints, which like critical scholars say never actually existed, actually did exist. So make of that what you will.
Okay. You guys did it. You guys got the 10 super chats. My wife is going to bring over the cat you have never seen. This is breaking news. You've never seen this cat because he is so skittish. Here he is. He does not want to be here. He's so angry. But this is Klaus. Klaus, you want to say hi?
Hey, Klaus.
No, he's very angry. But
is he purring?
You guys, no, he hates this. He hates to be picked up. Like, Klaus, you want to say anything? He's got a very distinct meow. I'm trying to get him to say something because he's very deep meow. Kind of. You can kind of hear it maybe. I don't know. But he likes his head scratched. And this is hard to get because anytime I go to like pet him, he runs because he wants pet on one windowsill in the house. So he runs to the other side of the house. He's like, pet me here. This is where I want pet.
Uh-huh.
There you go. Kind of.
There we are.
Yeah, he's got a very deep meow. Very deep meow.
Very menacing. Meow. I love it.
All right. I'm going to put him down before he starts tearing up my sweater because he will eventually get very angry here. But yeah, congratulations. You guys brought in the 10 super chats. Therefore, you get to see the cat you've never seen before. This is Klaus. Sorry. Yeah, he does not like to be picked up. But yeah, that's appreciate that. Appreciate those all coming in. Where were we with these? Okay. Ho 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 starts with H. You know what also starts with an H? Hell. You see? It's over. Proof that is evil. But also, hell comes from the Norse goddess Hel. Is Jim being pagan when he says you might go to hell? Don't go to hell, guys. Oh, look at the pagan influence. It's over. You see?
I mean, obviously the New Testament is pagan because the word for hell, at least the hell before the resurrection, is Hades, and Hades is a Greek concept. It comes straight out of Greek myth. You can see it operative in the Odyssey. It's even some of the imagery. I've actually heard this argument that the Christian imagery of hell, the Christian idea of hell, actually comes from Greek paganism, which I find very interesting. But
yeah,
oh well.
Saint Nicholas looking down, watching this nonsense.
Indeed.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's annoyed. I would be too. It's incredible, like the lengths they go to try to make stuff pagan. Again, Jim is doing the work of the devil. He's giving the devil ground. Okay, you get December 25th, you get Easter, you get Halloween, you get St. Valentine's Day. You should come back on my channel in February, because he did a Valentine's Day as pagan video a while back, and we should do that one.
Well,
yeah.
I wonder if he'll make another one for us to go through.
Yeah, Epiphany. That's a new one. They're now saying the Epiphany is from the Dionysus cult, because there was an Epiphany of Dionysus on January 5th, and the Epiphany of Jesus on January 6th.
We're just not allowed to celebrate biblical events.
And no, it's all pagan.
It's forbidden. How dare we?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very simple explanation for the Epiphany. If they started reading Mark on the New Year, you get to the baptism of Jesus in the readings by January 6th. Like, that's just a simpler explanation.
Well, yeah.
IP versus Wilbur family debate. Go. Yeah, David Wilbur's my brother-in-law. So my wife and his wife are sisters. So there's that. One of my cats just scared the other cat. Hey, stop it.
How many cats do you have?
Oh,
3. 3? Nice.
3.
Three's
yeah,
a good
so
number.
yeah, I'd like to do a discussion with him maybe on it in the future. I wanted to do it a couple years ago and he didn't want to do it. I think he was busy with school. Maybe in the future we'll do something like that. I'm just thoroughly unconvinced by the Torah observing stuff. I'll talk with 2 Messianic Jews before I do that debate, just because they'll help me prepare. So, warning to you, David Wilbur, you'll be debating all 3 of us in my head, technically. So
nice.
Is the renewal of creation for Earth or for the universe? If it's for the whole universe, what about the laws of physics or the possibility of extraterrestrial beings? I mean, this is one of those things, like, who knows? We're not there yet. I mean, I hope it's for the whole universe, because I think in the eschaton, my theory is we'll be spreading, since we'll have resurrected eternal bodies, our goal will be to turn the entire universe, planet after planet, into Eden, which could take a long time, given how long it's going to take to turn Earth into Eden. So, right. I mean, I think possibly something like that. I think that'd be amazing.
I think for the very prolonged foreseeable future, and I would personally argue, just for the totality of humanity's existence before the general resurrection, the Earth is going to be our domain. This is the planet that God has given us. This is the one over which we've been given dominion. I kind of agree with what C.S. Lewis said in books like Miracles, where it's likely that it's very possible that God created other planets which are subject to other intelligent metaphysically human beings, other rational animals, which are the sort of crowning jewels of their creations and stuff like that. I think that that's probably what is going to be the case.
Yeah. For IP, do you think baptism by water saves? Yes, baptism saves. That's what the New Testament says.
St. Peter.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Lutheran satire video?
Yes. Yes. Baptism saves. Haven't you ever heard of the thief on the cross? Yes, I've heard of the thief on the cross. I was there when it happened.
Yeah, I love that video. Yeah. Yeah. So check out the video. What about the thief on the cross? That's the name of the video. What about this thief on the cross?
Although I will admit, the best part of the video by far is at the very end, where Zwingli is like, "Oh, so I bet you think that Jesus was a door, huh?" And then he says in like the end credits or whatever, "And to my sacramentarian friends, don't worry, I'm not seriously suggesting that Zwingli is in hell. I'm boldly asserting." Oh, it's wonderful.
Can someone call the Inquisition? Maybe they had a point before.
I'm just saying. I've said for many years, we don't need a new crusade. We need a renewed Inquisition.
I almost agree. I can't. But I see the logic. I see
I'm
it.
like 60% joking, but yeah.
Yeah.
Technically,
do you think that
Benedict the 16th, before he was before he became Pope Benedict, when he was back when he was Joseph Ratzinger, he headed the Holy Office, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, before it became known as the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and was still called the Holy Office of the Inquisition, of the Papal Inquisition, which means that Pope Benedict was the High Inquisitor of the Catholic Church for a decent chunk of his life, which I think is glorious.
I just say we'll bring back the Inquisition, but we're going to do it Mel Brooks style, so they'll be singing and dancing as we, get them to confess.
I love it. That would be
Don't
great.
be boring.
History of the World Part 1 is amazing.
Yeah. Do you think baptism is essential for salvation? So, no, because Abraham is saved and wasn't baptized. The thief on the cross wasn't baptized. It's not essential, but it does save. It is a path to be saved. So it does save, but it's not the only way God can save.
I would say that it's, especially for Christians in the New Covenant,
there's no reason not to be baptized.
It's the ordinary means of salvation. The Catholic Church teaches that God can use any means of grace that he sees. We are bound by the sacraments, is what we would say, but God is not bound by the sacraments, except insofar as he has promised to give grace if we perform the sacraments, and therefore he is obligated in that sense to fulfill his promises.
Let's see the cat. All right, let's see the holy cat. Well, you saw the cat. I hope you enjoyed seeing Klaus, because he's the only cat I've never shown. You got to see something never before seen on camera. Thanks for all the lectures and videos. You've helped me with my faith abundantly. Very much appreciated. Here's your extra super chat. Love your Book of Concord. Yeah, I got a Book of Concord right there.
Oh, nice.
It's if Will looks at it for too long, his eyes will catch on fire.
Well, don't you know that the Book of Concord just straight up refutes Catholicism?
Totally, yeah, definitely. Well, I
actually have read most of the Book of Concord, just for the record.
We did a Bible study at a brewery, which was amazing. Where we went through the book, we went through the Augsburg Confession and the confutation of it.
Yeah.
And then some of the apology. Not the apology is really long for it because it's a response to the confutation, but we went through some of that as well, and it was really interesting. It was just going through the history and everything and covering that, the difference between Catholics and Lutherans. And I love that they never call themselves Lutherans. Like the entire time they're like, yeah, we're Catholics. We're just German Catholics.
We're Augsburg Catholics is what they would often say. I've actually heard Lutherans today call themselves Augsburg Catholics.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Lutherans will say, we are still Catholic. We're just not Roman Catholics, is there what the saying is. Yeah. So is the cat pagan? Well, the one I showed you isn't, but my other cat's name is Hades, which is a pagan name. And another one's name is Luna, which is a pagan name. Then I have two dogs. The dogs are Thor and Loki, so they're pagan. So I have a lot of pagan animals running around this house.
Man, clearly you're not helping your credibility in like the eyes of the Torah observers.
Yeah, they're going to be very angry about it. Yeah. Hi, I'm late. Can you please give a quick summary of why Christmas is pagan? Well, it's obviously pagan because
it's not.
No, I'll give it. It's because Odin had a horse that was white. It was unlike Jesus's horse that was white, because this one was the one that went into Christmas, but it became reindeer somehow. And then they tried to hide it by adding Rudolph. But Rudolph must be pagan. His nuclear lighting nose goes back to the ancient pagans that did nuclear experiments to honor the gods. And yeah, also mistletoe. Therefore, it's pagan. Case closed, ladies and gentlemen.
The sun is a nuclear fusion machine, basically.
There you go. That's what Rudolph's nose is, the sun, which the pagans used to worship. Therefore, boom.
You see? It's irrefutable. I can't do that. I can't do the voice.
You're getting better at it. It was better than last time. So keep practicing.
I'll be perfect at it by the next time. By the next stream.
Talking about book suggestions, I highly recommend The Gospel of the Kingdom by Philip Morrow, written in 1912 on the warning of Schofieldism. Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, I've not heard of that one. I think the crux of the issue, the sigil symbolism, which can be energized by will, by ritual high magic. That is the magic with a K, which ties to the occult, telling as Christians who dabble in the occult previously. Yeah, but I mean, like, you have to be dabbling in it. Like, you actually have to be trying to use the symbol to summon a demon or a spirit. Just the symbol itself isn't bad. Like, there are pentagrams on the American flag. Is the American flag therefore evil? No, because there are 50 stars and no one is thinking, yes, these are clearly pentagrams and we're using them to summon demons. We got it. It's about the context of the symbol. not about the symbol itself.
Right.
And again, like 5-pointed stars, again, they're in Jewish literature. Solomon's ring is a 5-pointed star, and I think it's the Testament of Solomon. He goes around like it's like some sort of like early like Marvel or DC like comic. Solomon is like a superhero with his magic ring. He's like the Green Lantern, but he goes around, he binds demons, and then he makes the demons build part of the temple. I mean, like, it's a crazy work.
I mean, honestly, this is just more proof that like Lord of the Rings is pagan, because there are snakes on the ring of bear here.
Just like Moses' staff with the serpent, it's all pagan.
Exactly. Like, what more proof do you need?
Hey, I asked yesterday, but what do you think about Dale Allison's Resurrection book? Do you agree with his perspective? So the one thing I would say is I agree with a lot of what he says. I don't agree with everything, because I think like he proposes certain things that I think just go too far, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But I remember I do think Jesus was physically resurrected. I do think he was in a tomb that was guarded by soldiers. I just don't think they were Roman. I think they were Jewish soldiers. But that's kind of where I fall on that kind of stuff. He doesn't go that far, and so I agree with some of like Kona's critiques on him and everything. So I think it's good. I think it's very intelligent.
Yeah, I'll admit I don't have much to add when it comes to the resurrection stuff. I'm not particularly well studied in that, so yeah, I just won't be commenting.
That's because you're Catholic. You don't read.
Yeah, I know. I don't care about defending Christianity.
Yeah, I figured it out. You don't look like Jim Gaffigan, but you sound like him, and you have the same color hair. Okay, so that's why people think you look like Jim Gaffigan. You don't, because I did look. You sound like him though, and you have the same color hair. So there's your problem.
Do people really think that about me?
Listen, that just sounded like Jim. You literally sounded like Gaffigan when you said that.
Why does this guy wear all the glasses all the time? Is he supposed to look old? Is he trying to look old? What's with that beard? It looks like he's both 75 and 12 at the same time. Is this all he does?
People are seeing it. See, so now we have it.
It's funny that this is being brought up again just because of the fact that while I was working today, so this lady just basically just said, "Has anyone ever told you that you look like Jim Gaffigan?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, that's the guy."
Thanks for the response to my Christian nationalist question. A debate with you and a Christian nationalist would be so awesome. If you could get Corey J. Muller, be interesting. I don't know who that is, but I'll look him up. I don't know if I've heard of him. But yeah, I don't know that one off the top of my head. So yeah, you're muted, by the way. But yeah, thanks for coming, everyone, to the once again showing that Jim Staley will continue to lie to you and his whole audience about the alleged pagan origins of Christmas, because he doesn't care about facts. He is not passionate for truth as he claims that he is. And we are once again exposing him. But this one was different. This was just not, his earlier stuff was just the date. Now he was like, I'm going to tell you about the Yule logs and the Christmas tree and Santa.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I think that he's made a number of videos about Christmas, and this is sort of just more in line with those other videos. The previous ones seem to be his actual attempt at doing scholarship, where, I mean, not as though he didn't make some form of an attempt here, but more that he was actually trying to do a documentary style, proving a specific point, which, again, we would just say, first off, no, Christmas wasn't chosen to be on December 25th because of paganism. Two, even if it was, that still wouldn't matter. Like, even if that had been the reason, that wouldn't be a problem, is the thing.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for coming on last minute. I appreciate that. I'll be on my channel again Monday. I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Bo Branson on the Trinity and how we solve that logical problem of the Trinity, and talking about historical models and monarchical Trinitarianism. Anyone who wants to come to the private Q&A, this will be this Saturday morning. Just become a Patreon supporter. You'll get the link, and Patreon link is below. So anyone who wants to do that, you can come out and answer every single question in the live chat, even if it takes 4 hours. Will not be there.
I will not be there.
No. So
I will probably be working, if I'm being honest. So
fair enough. So, all right. Will probably be back in February. We should do a Valentine's Day one.
That would be fun. I would like that.
Yeah. So, all right, everyone. I'll see you guys Monday. Come back Monday, 8 Eastern. And as I stream every Monday, 8 Eastern. I'll see you guys next time.